Well, welcome back to Rhythm and Resilience. For those of you that are new today, as this whole COVID-19 situation started unfolding, my spirit kept talking to me about Michelle. You've got to find a rhythm to have resilience during this universal reset. And so I kept playing that over and over. And then I was like, well, okay. So if I always figure for me, if it's good for me, it's probably good for the people that I get a chance to guide. And so it's fascinating. You think about your wellness connection. People always ask me about that. And I want to tell you, it was designed really very self-fully, not selfishly, self-fully, just like this program it's what I do to stay well. And so if I have time to get acupuncture and I get massage and I get psychotherapy and all those little things that I do to try to keep my vehicle going, the people that I serve deserve that. So that's why we have a sauna. That's why we have a brain tap room. We have a classroom because I'm really big on education, as you all know, or many of you know. So that's this program, Rhythm Resilience. How can we give you, number one, hope? Number one, hope. Number two, connect you to the right resources to help you navigate this time. And guidance, what type of guidance will help you? We also call it pearls. What little pearls, what nugget will you hear today that will help you navigate through this time? And then, of course, celebrating people. So I did those backwards. So we want to celebrate. And so I'm going to encourage you, for those of you that are new today, I keep the chat kind of running, and Eleanor helps me manage that. So I'd love to hear what you've been implementing in your life to help you during this time for maybe some of the guests. I mentioned yesterday that I keep replaying this word, the words that little Sonia totally talked about is, and she talked about, by the way, she's not little, she's much taller than I am, but we call her little Sonia because her mom's big Sonia. But I keep hearing water your imagination. And so as I was coaching one of our practitioners today, I said, this is a time to really look at your imagination. What's your dreams? If you weren't afraid, what would you do if you could do anything? And this is a good time to really look at that. So I'd love to hear what little pearls you're taking away in your life. As you know, I'd love to share the love with our guests at the end. So any little takeaways you get that you really feel compelled to share that as well. And we will share the love. For some of you, you may know it's Earth Day today. And how about for that little nice quiet rain we're having on Earth Day to really remind us about heaven and earth. And that's a perfect discussion for today as I bring in the word heaven. There's a quote from yesterday, and oddly enough, I got the quote twice in one day. I have this lovely patient, Lori, who brings me a quote, and every time she comes in, because she knows I'm a quote nerd. And she brought me this quote, and then somebody else shared the quote in the chat section yesterday. So I just figured that's a sign for the universe. So the quote is, in the rush to return back to normal, use this time to consider which part of normal are worth rushing back to, from Dave Hollis. I was listening to a podcast on a walk this morning from Elevate Church, and with Stephen Friedrich, I think is how you say his last name. And Stephen was talking about maybe what we had wasn't normal, because it seemed like we were never had enough. So that's fascinating now that our liberties have shifted. Anyhow, today's guest, I've been following her series online. What she doesn't know about me is I really love any church and I love any cross. And so she's a photography. She uses it to encourage faith in everyday life, believing nature is the original art form, and being a farm girl at heart. Her mission is to uplift and encourage faith. Amy founded livebreathealive.com. It'll be in the show notes, taking her iPhone photos and turning them into cards and frames as a vehicle of help. Amy has over 30, I'm trying to see this from way back here without glasses, just so you know. Amy has over 20 years of senior level human resource management experience within organization, and has started Arbor Grove in 2014, providing consulting services in human resources. Amy is just a wonderful soul. She's got a huge heart. You're going to really enjoy hearing her today on Rhythm and Resilience, Wisdom Wednesday. Amy, welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm just honored to be here and spend a little time with you all.
Well, it is just so much fun. Just really I tell you, I just feel like I'm the one benefiting. We were actually supposed to have dinner next week. I'm going to assume it's going to get rescheduled. Dr. Troy, you probably know that too. Right. We've been looking forward to that for about 60 days. Anyhow, first of all, tell me about your obsession with crosses.
Right. Well, I do call it an obsession because I was compelled in 2016 to start taking pictures of crosses. And it really wasn't an option for me. That word compelled really is driven by the spirit, and it's something that I had to just seek out and find as I was reconnecting with my faith. I started reading the Bible in January of 2016, and the first day I did that, I found a cross. I took a picture. The next day I kept looking, I found them, and I just kept taking them. And after 30 days, I was thinking, how long am I going to do this? I mean, and for what end? I mean, why am I doing this? And during that time, I had went out developing my personal relationship with God, something deeper. I grew up going to church, but I consider myself kind of a mediocre Methodist, that my parents are very well ministered and go to church, and their community is all the church. But I didn't have that real personal connection. I felt like I was a good person, but I didn't know what faith meant to me on a personal level. And so finally I was reconnecting to that, and driving back from visiting my cousin in Colorado, I stopped, as I had been doing, to take pictures of crosses. I had to find them. And I stopped at a church, and it just so happens, a sign, this individual was there, and he was the minister, and he said, well, usually I'm not here. I said, well, can I come in and take a picture of your sanctuary cross? He said, yes. And I told him, I said, I'm not sure why I'm taking pictures of crosses. And he said, well, a lot of people think the symbol of the cross is death, but it's really life. And that connected to me because earlier in that month were the words live, breathe, alive, that I was seeking and searching, that I had to find those, and I didn't really know what that meant. And along my journey of faith, I have discovered those words. And my initial mission of trying to help a little girl turned into something much more to inspire faith.
So talk about some of the wisdom you've learned the last, if I do my math right, that's 4 years that you've kind of dove in. And I love how you're using the word listen. So for me, it's always about listening
Right.
to that small voice inside of me. Some people would call that God.
Yes.
That tells me to reach out to this person, whatever. So tell me about some of the wisdom the last 4 years.
I think listening to the beat of faith in your heart, listen to that beat in your heart, these nudges that you have. That now 2020, it was really probably 2015, I started taking pictures on my iPhone. I'm not I don't consider myself a photographer, but I've developed into one because I only use my iPhone. I'm not trained in that. And I really wanted to help this little girl, but I had been taking some photos of things that were important to me, my grandparents' farm as they sold it, just to remember it. And I found along the way that I'd been taking pictures of these crosses all along the way, these everyday crosses. And some of the nuggets that I learned is listening to the beat in your heart. It kept calling me, and how as you just keep getting you do steps 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 come, and then 6, 7, 8, and then you're at 100, and it just keeps growing. That my initial want was to help this little girl, and I needed a product to sell. I met this little girl in Cuba, and in a communist community and very poor living conditions. I thought, we have so much in the United States. What can I do? And I needed a product to sell. And along the way of my self-discovery and reading the Bible and reconnecting to my faith, prayer, it was like, maybe I can take some of these pictures of crosses, turn them into greeting cards, and that can be the vehicle to sell to help this little girl. And it started there. And I think what's so cool about God or your faith in whatever you may believe is that once you get started and taking actions, they keep going, and starting with the desire to help someone. So one of the first crosses I have it here that I took, and I thought, I really like this photo. And it started there, and I had signs along the way. So I guess listening to your heart, it was also these signs to, ask, seek, knock. People can always say no, but they can also say yes. And I think prayer is really important in listening to what's in your heart. Part of that prayer time is silence, having some stillness, some time to actually hear, because there's so much noise around. And in my searching and seeking what I need to do, because I'm not a photographer, I didn't know how to bring these images to market or how it would look. There was a big community aspect. of other people helping. Oh, well, I know someone. Well, I know someone here, or just little bits of encouragement along the way. And as I started taking these steps of faith, listening to that beat of your heart, I had these signs that I started with these form crosses, but as it developed, when I didn't know and when I was really struggling and at a really low place, and I would be praying, God, help me. What do I need to do? I started seeing these everyday crosses, and that's really transformed to what, my mission is to inspire faith and for people to see faith in the everyday, that it's not just a practiced environment. It's not necessarily going to a building of church. You can have church in nature. I find a lot of solace and God in nature, the original art form, I think. And so I started taking pictures of some of these everyday crosses I just saw formed just at the timing that I had been on these same walk spots, never saw this before, but I knew they were special. They were a gift for me. And so it's pretty cool now that as I have started sharing some of these, people send me photos of crosses, or there's an awareness of some of the everyday crosses. And it's not me that they're seeing. It's a higher power. It's God. It's that faith component.
I'm questioning, and this is a question for the people on the chat today, is I wonder what nudges, how do you hear? How do you listen? For me, it just is somebody pops in my mind and I can't shake them.
Right.
It's not they're there and they leave. It's there and they're there and they're there. And if I don't do something with that there, then it stays with me. And it just,
Yes.
It's almost like, hey, don't forget about me.
Right.
And
right.
so that's one of my secret powers is people's like, how did you know, like I just reached out to somebody there. How did you know to connect with me? I'm like, I just listen. So I'm curious how everybody else listens. Do you see a sign? Do you see a cross? So feel free to share that. So when you think about this little girl, tell us how that, you brought up, we're doing this project for a little girl. Update us on that status.
Right. So I do stay in touch with her. Her name's Jordi Alice, and I met her in October of 2015 in Cuba. Was outside of Ernest Hemingway's estates and wanted to see just some of the more community, to see the real aspects of some of Cuba. And I just turned around, kind of a nudge. I just turned around. There was this little boy and a little girl, and I asked if I could take a picture of her in my limited Spanish that I had, un photo from high school. And she was just so sweet and charming. And this little boy raced up, hey, take my picture too. And so I did, and then started walking ahead. And she was on one side of the road, I was on the other, and I looked over at her, and there she was. And I just kind of used that universal sign language, pointing, me, come over to you. And she nodded. So I walked across the road, and we walked a little ways, and I asked her name, my very limited high school Spanish, practically 30 years ago. And so we spoke a little bit, and ¿Cuántos años? How old are you? And then, because I didn't, the Spanish language is sometimes so hard, the vowels, her name was so foreign that I couldn't remember it. And spoke with her for a little while, or just had time with her, and then needed to get on the bus to go back. And I just kept thinking about her. And this nudge, another person that's been very important in my life is my sweet Jean, an adopted grandmother. And I really realized at this point too, when I met Jordi Alice, and thinking about Jean, how she was close to 87 and she passed away 3 years ago, but she was someone that God brought into my life. And there's certain times that you can really see and staying connected to someone. My sweet Jean, I met my first job out of college in HR. She was never married, didn't have kids, and we just connected. And even when I moved to Kansas City, she was just mine. God gave her to me. And so she really didn't have someone at the end of her life when she went into the nursing home and then memory care unit, that I was able to be there for her. And I really realized that at that point, I'm like, okay, God, it was me that you put, 20 years later, that I was the one to be there for her. And so segue to meeting this little girl in Cuba, I realized that she was my next, that I had been helping my sweet Jean for these years, but she would be leaving us and dying soon, that I could help this little girl. And I didn't know the how, but I think when God brings someone into your life, and you know it's in your heart, it will work. So currently, I send her care packages. I raise some money. So some of the cards, I have several collections, some of just my formed crosses, and then I have a Cuba collection from crosses that I actually took in Cuba, that I took these crosses photos before I really even knew what I was going to do with them. And I think that's the awesome part that God brings into your life too. Sometimes you do things without even really knowing it, and then it'll unfold. And then along the ways, I just wanted to keep helping her. I kept seeing these everyday crosses, and I started writing. One I have here, kind of these everyday crosses. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but it's just etched right here. And what I find so interesting about many of these images that I find beautiful, because I think they can often be very overlooked and unappreciated and not really beautiful in our today's world of the name, but they're like us, that, you know, this was actually, I found, I was in Las Vegas helping with a trade show, and this was I took a break to go outside, get some fresh air. And this was actually on the concrete. People were eating and stepping over it all around. And all of a sudden I see it, and I just think it's like a gift. It's beautiful, but everyone else is just walking on it. It's stepped over. It's concrete that wasn't even taken care of when the laying of the sidewalk was done. And I think that is really important for sometimes us. We feel kind of stepped over and broken and discarded and not pretty or beautiful, but I find such beauty in some of these images. So I've really been developing this everyday cross collection to help inspire people to look around at your surroundings, that God is present all the time. Sometimes when I would see these crosses and I was praying, I really kind of, looked around a little bit. I'm like, is it just me? Am I the only one that sees this? And a lot of times you see it in nature, and crosses in the sky that just are beautifully formed, or spending time praying. I see these all the time. So I've been developing a collection of crosses just for what I call everyday crosses.
Well, I mentioned today's, I'm a word nerd, like you are with crosses, I'm with words.
Yeah.
Okay, celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope. Today's Wisdom Wednesdays on rhythm and resilience, right? So I'm curious, what wisdom have you been getting in the last 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks? I don't even know how many weeks. I don't even know what day it is most of the time. Have you been getting during this time of COVID?
Let's see. I think a lot of it is still turning inward. That often there's so much in the world and keeping up with the news, but having an internal turning versus just tuning external, tuning externally to the world, what is in there, but that internal tuning to stay solid and present. A lot of the things that I've been doing during this time is still connecting with nature, taking walks, being outside is helpful. Those nudges, a lot of times hear things or listen to my heart. I love this phrase where, why is God so quiet? Because he's close. Or, that you really do have to take some time in stillness to hear, to listen. A lot of times I'll see words. I'm a big word person too. Words have so much power and meaning, as do images have so much power and meaning. So I think the things that I'm hearing is still having that time to pause and silence, not rushing. So many times when I have to do this, I'm a task person, I need to reach my next goal, I have to do this, it's pausing and seeing that sometimes that it's preparation.
The big universal pause we're in right now. Well, Bridget, I want to acknowledge you. I was looking earlier, I think, and I was like, there's got to be a cross behind her. And I actually had trouble seeing it. Bridget mentioned there's 2 crosses right behind you. Can you see it in the door?
Which one?
Yeah, in both doors. Have you just?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah, I do now.
So Bridget, it's so funny because I actually was looking. I was looking for the cross, and I wasn't seeing it until you actually. I was looking for it when we first started. Anyhow, that's a whole nother conversation as we continue to really listen. I want to remind our guests it's a good time to ask questions for Amy if you have some right now. When you think of the word hope, what kind of hope would you like to offer our listeners today, especially talking about the word faith? I saw on a sign years ago, when fear shows up, faith doesn't. I literally saw it. I know exactly where I saw it. I know that I was not in my current office. So I know that it was at least 19 plus years ago, but I remember exactly, you know, how you drive by a church thing, it'll say that when fear shows up, faith doesn't. So what type of faith or hope would you want to share with our listeners today?
Those are great questions. I think that recognizing that faith is all around and there's faith within too. A lot of the times when I write best or clearer in the morning, to hear what's resonating within me. I think this is the perfect time to, you know, double down or turn to faith, especially with all of the challenges in the world, and that there is hope. I think faith is partly gratitude, that there's a lot of things that aren't right, but taking time to be grateful and thankful for what we do have, whether that's, you know, your family, your friends, people, those connections, even memories. I have a lot of hope because I know of my relationship with Jean that I have over 20 years, that was a very redeeming experience for me to be there for another person. So that provides hope for me that in future 20 years, it will be okay. I think at times, you know, Jean didn't know how things would end or who would be there, but God took care of it. And she had given me some advice when I said, Jean, 87 years helping her clean out her house. I asked her, I said, what words of advice do you have? And without an instant, no hesitation, she said, trust in the Lord. He'll take care of you. And he did for her. She almost ran out of money, you know, at the end of her life for all these nursing homes and assisted living. So I think at times when we might not have a lot of hope, to some of these memories that we have of people that have been in our life and seeing faith in God in their lives, how they were touched, remembering that. I think it's also hope. We can see hope when we are out and we see faith in the everyday, even if we're used to going to church in that community, you have another community to turn towards, whether, you know, your Zoom community, people you can talk to, use FaceTime. And then seeing faith in the everyday. I think this is the exact time to be looking for it. Once you start seeing it, you'll find a sense of calm.
You know, it's interesting. I think about my story, and Eleanor, I want to give people my E-Factor book, the electronic version, Engage, Energize, Enrich, 3 Steps to a Vibrant Health. Because I'm thinking about the genes in my life, and they're the younger people. So, life is so much, it's so fascinating to look at it from the front, you know, looking back versus looking forward. And right now, as we are looking forward, and there's that uncertainty, but I think that faith gives you a level of certainty that the sun is going to come up again, you know, that if we, and how do we dial in closer to our spiritual practices. But I remember when I wrote the E-Factor book, Engage, Energize, Enrich, 3 Steps to Vibrant Health, in the enrich part, which is part of why I do what I'm doing now, is my life has been so far. I always say, if it ends tomorrow, it has been far greater than I ever thought it would be. Getting to talk to people like you, and getting to have people trust me enough to give them guidance on their well-being. Holy moly, what a gift that is. Or to actually adjust them. I don't know if you've ever been adjusted, but it takes a lot of courage to have somebody let you adjust their neck, you know. And I don't take that lightly. But I think about all the people that poured into Michelle Robin before, who knew, they maybe didn't know where I was going, but something inside of them said, you know what, this is your gene. Get in there and touch them. So thank you for sharing the gene story, because I think about all the people that were my Amy's in my life over the last 50 plus years. The Maggies, and I had a nun, and I could go on, but I tell the story in Engage, Energize, Enrich. So we'll give you that. We'll share that with you. What's a habit you've picked up during this reset that you plan to continue?
I'm not sure if I have any new habits. I have realized just the importance of movement. I miss some of my, 30 minutes of elliptical. So I make sure that I get out and can, keep the movement going, that's good for the mind when you might be feeling down. Keep turning into faith. I also realize even more of gratitude with my parents, connecting with them while they're 76 and 78, spending time on FaceTime with them. So maybe that's it, where we used to always talk on the phone, but now I find much more of, I want to see them. I want to see them more and talk with them while I still can. So that's something. And then going back to your question of even hope and faith, I think at times we always want to have answers and that immediacy, just like modern medicine wants to give you a pill to cure anything. And thinking that just like where this little girl in Cuba, Jordi Alice, I don't know what that 20 years is going to be, but I know I'm going to know her in 20 years. And I don't have to have all those answers right now. I just have to trust and just do the best thing that you can do. And sometimes helping people is just being there. It doesn't cost anything. It's being present. And I think that is love.
One of the questions that we've been talking about is what's your medicine? What's your magic? And so you're recapping what some people said about being there. You know what's been fascinating about being on Zoom so much is I really love when we can see people's faces because you actually get a chance. I just got off a call with one of our corporate clients who we had a wellness program in play and that we were doing live, and we went virtual, and they said, no, we're staying on it, which was great. But to be able to, I've actually, you know, why I'm enjoying Zoom is because people are up close. It's kind of like watching a game, and instead of being, you know, up in this nosebleed section, you're right here. I feel like we're right here together. That is so stinking cool to really. So it's interesting you brought up that magic and being. Have you ever heard of LTRs?
No. What is that?
Well, I call it lifetime relationships. And so if you go into a relationship, just like you're doing with this young lady who I didn't get her name, and I'm not going to butcher it up here, but if you can go into a relationship knowing that, intending to be in their life for the rest of your life, I think that we put more energy into it. So share that with me, because I'm sure you meet people in your life that are just at that train stop. You know, our psychotherapist friend Crystal says that, you know, life is like a train. You get on it and you get off of it. And sometimes you get off earlier than you thought.
Right.
And that's usually my counseling sessions because of running a business like I do. People get off the train all the time, whether it's a patient, whether it's a practitioner. And I'm the person that's LTR. I'm planning on being in your life forever. And so I've really had to work on that myself. It's probably been one of my biggest Achilles heel as a human person. So
right.
Multiple questions there. Take whichever one you want to take.
I guess, okay. Life relationships. I think it goes back to just a belief that God blends and brings people into your life. And maybe it's just a faith knowing and that they are there, they're your constant. There's someone that you just have within you. I don't know if I ever necessarily knew that early on with Jean. I just love being around her, or Jordi Alice, or other people in my life. And so I think it's taking it in a faith perspective, that it's there. They're just there. They were brought to me. I turned around, there they were. How I met this person, I don't know, but there's an energy and you enjoy it. And that I love how you always have the small changes, big shifts. I say, or I believe, you know, the little things in life are big. And when you can enjoy being with someone and you don't have to do anything or go anywhere or spend any money, I think that's important. It's just being there. So going back to that, being is helping, and the little things in life are big. So I think maybe those are some indicators of knowing those lifetime relationships.
Who's been your Jean? Do you have some Jeans in your life?
Me?
Yeah. When you look at your life, who are your Jeans? And this is a great question for all of you. Yesterday we talked about the wheel of support. No one goes through life alone. And who are the spokes? You have a wheel of support now, and probably a wheel of support 20 years from now, and it may look different 20 years from forward. So I'm curious, who are you supporting and who's supporting you? So who are your Jeans?
My Jeans, oh gosh, I have a lot in my life. And sometimes it changes in the friendships, the long-term relationships. And I think recently, and with all of this, you realize who they are. I have a lot of good friends, family, I would say, who are my spokes, who keep it going. And sometimes it might be a kind of a bumpy spoke, but you keep getting back on, and you keep saying, okay, no, we are here. We're going to keep going.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned it could be bumpy, and it makes me think of Wayne Dyer. He had a saying that the turd that won't flush. You know, sometimes the
Oh,
people
yeah.
that keep showing up in your life are kind of like that turd that won't flush. And how do you keep, um, showing up for each other in the dissonance? And
Mhm.
maybe that dissonance, you're going to push through it, and you're going to really get more deepened into your soul. Hey, I want to remind you, this is a great time. If you have questions for Amy, this is a good time to do that, or anything that you would like to share that you've been learning the last week. Um, so Amy, I'm curious for you,
Yes.
when you think about pre and post COVID, what compassion have you had to develop that you weren't practicing before for yourself or others?
Probably, I'm always challenging patience for myself and others. And so I think that's something I'm still working on, seeing where other people are, identifying with that. Um, Being more aware. When I take walks, I'm surprised. I don't know why I'm surprised, but people really are, staying distant. I'll walk off the path, or they will, or you're trying to respect people's spaces, and it's this new world. I mean, that's appreciative, but then also it's kind of odd at the same time. Um, so practicing compassion, I think, really starts with gratitude for the relationships in my life, seeing them as those ongoing spokes, and even when it gets bumpy, to say, no, we're riding this, we're going. That's a great question. So I guess it's really just the compassion and trying to adjust. I mean, being adaptable, recognizing that everyone has their own sense and sensibility. Sometimes there's not really a common sense, but you'd hope there would be. So trying to really be patient with myself and others.
How are you, and this is for everybody, and I'm going to take it to Amy first, everybody else can share it in the chat. How are you showing gratitude to your tribe? You're doing FaceTime. What else are you doing?
Well, I used to, and I'm going to start doing this again. Writing notes, cards. I love sending handwritten mail to people, and I think that's the simple, easy aspect to do. I've always done that, and I have a bunch of cards because that's how I kind of got started, and then it kind of transitioned more into frames and artwork. But that's something that I'm going to pick back up. I was just thinking about the last couple of days of reaching out to people who are in my tribe, my community, those people that have been there, your long-term friends, and to just send them a note saying, hey, thinking about you. And I find, interestingly, even a couple people had noted, I remember when you sent me that card, I still have it, or that they've held on to it. That especially at this time when we're so used to getting an email or a text, but just your handwritten, real mail, that goes a long way.
Snail mail, nothing like snail mail.
Right.
You know, yeah, I'm with you. That's been one way, and I actually have I'm kind of home alone right now, which is good and bad. So I have offices about, on every single floor. I live in a kind of a townhouse, and I have on my kitchen, whatever it's called, the thing in the middle that you can prepare food on, but I have note cards and things right there, and I already have stamps. So there's just little things you can do. And I haven't written a note the last 48 hours. So I need to get back on it. I got to feel called though. It's
Right.
not something I can force.
Right.
So that's a good idea. I'd love to hear how you are doing, you're all sharing. What have I not asked you that you feel compelled to share with our listeners today?
Oh, that's good. I guess I'd encourage listeners, especially in this time, to just look around them and to see the beauty in small things that maybe you've missed before because you've been too busy. You haven't had time to take a walk. You've been rushed. And even now, if people have kids at home, that's a challenge, but take some time to be still, have your own place to listen to those nudges in your heart. And I think also just realize, you talked about the impact of words being powerful, spoken, also written, and images too are very powerful. And I know a lot of times on social media, when I post photos of crosses, they might not be that popular, but then but if you post a picture of a photo, of you or something, then it's like, oh yeah, yeah. Which you think wanting to inspire faith and things, but I still do it because it's been interesting that just the pattern that can be there, and subconsciously images are powerful, and that you never know when a seed of faith can spark and be planted, like the great, farming analogy. So I guess those are a few points. The power of images. I send a lot of photos, I guess, is another thing. If I'm out on a walk and something that's beautiful, I'll send photos to people who I know love nature, to friends, just so that they can see something a little bit different.
I love that you have the courage to post. It's taken me a while. When I turned 50, I did this quote deck, 50 quotes that inspired, actually kept me alive my first 50 years. And I posted the prayer of protection, which we actually shared last week with our talk on Wisdom Wednesday with Patricia Bass. It says, the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches over me wherever I am. That's James Dillard Freeman. But oddly enough, when I first started practicing, I had this little small office. I absolutely loved it. It's about 1,000 square feet. I started for about $22,000, which is, about my overhead a month now. And that's what I started started my whole business for back in the 90s. But I used to have on a board, oh gosh, thanks for choosing. Something about God is the ultimate, God's the healer, right? We're not healing. I don't remember the exact words now, but as a 26-year-old, somebody said something to me about that. And I started hiding my faith. And even though I wasn't raised in the church, I really feel connected to spirit, whatever people want to call that. But I remember, I said God heals, we just work here. I think so. That's what it said. God heals, we just work here. But someone said trash me for it. And so I kind of took it down, and I kind of regret it now. And so I'm so proud of you for just sharing that. And I remember when I posted that prayer during those 50 years, I felt like I was like coming out of this person of faith, which I'm embarrassed to say that I let it but that's all right. It's the facts. It's a true story.
Well, I think it's important. And even, I relate to it from my career in human resources. I remember my first job out of college, we'd have, employee Christmas parties, and you'd say Christmas parties. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, you can't say that. You have to say holiday party. You can't say, you have to really tone it down, and politics and all that. And I've kind of always been that, well, no, that's not political. You can't we don't, we shouldn't have that in the workforce, because you don't want people to fear that. And even on LinkedIn, I post some things about faith at times. I have a faith blog that I write about. And sometimes I have found I don't want to be off-putting to people to say the word God or faith, because I want it to be welcoming. Because there was a time when I felt myself as a Christian, but I didn't always go around talking about faith or God-centered approach. And I want to invite people, whether they see it as more spiritual or they really do have a true religious connection, which I do. Crosses are that rebirth, reborn, renewed, the symbol of faith. So I get what you mean. And I think there's a real resurgence. And even in the workplace now, there is a place for it. It still is understated. But maybe some of this, virus and change can bring a higher awareness.
This big universal pause. Well, I've really, for all of you listening, I've known of Amy. We've had 1, 2, maybe 3 conversations. I'm not sure we've ever really had but one in person. And so thank you for agreeing to be on the Rhythm and Resilience today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to share a little bit.
I really appreciate that. We'll put a few things out. I want to, Amy, say thank you for sharing Cross. It really speaks to me. It inspires me to be more faithful, but at the same time share my faith and not be so scared. So that's one thing I really want to say thank you for. I've been admiring that from a distance. For our listeners, we're going to be on again tomorrow on Talk Story Thursday, and I've invited Dr. Heidi Hanna to be on the show. You've probably seen it in the notes, her bio. I don't have it in front of me, but she is funny, really funny, wicked smart. She's from San Diego. Actually, I believe had COVID, was recovered from COVID-19. To my knowledge, should be the first guest we've had on that's actually had COVID. So she'll be our guest tomorrow. And then on Friday, and I met Heidi at a Live in Vitality event a few years ago, and we became friends from that. And then on Friday, we'll have Edie Varley, and Edie talks a lot about emotional intelligence. She's probably in her late 60s, early 70s, out of St. Louis. We met about a half a dozen, maybe a dozen years ago. She's friends with John O'Leary, by the way, one of his coaches. John was our first speaker that helped us kick off this. So we've got a couple of great days. I'm hoping that you are continuing to find some peace in this pause, and trusting in the divine wisdom of who you're meeting and who you're getting to connect with. I'd love for you to, if you feel called, share what you're learning. Either send me an email, post it on social. Let's create this movement of hope and healing, because we never know who the Jeans are and who the Amy's are in the world. All right. I'm sending you all.
Thank you so much. You are such an inspiration to all, and just your focus of well-being and spirit and what you're doing now to help people. It's really inspiring and inspires me.
Well, we're doing it all together. And Mark, I'm so glad that you feel closer to God. Eleanor says, inspiring to hear your path. So I'm sending all of you, I've got it now. It's taken me a couple weeks to figure out how I'm going to be able to give hugs. So I'm sending you all heart, because I'm a big heart to heart hugs. You got to hug on the right side. So I'm sending you all big heart to heart, beating heart hugs. And hey, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Eleanor. Rana, thanks for joining us. Black Beauty, I don't know your first name, but thanks for joining us. Dr. Troy, Stephanie, Lisa, Liz, Linda, Miriam, Bridget. See you guys later. Blessings to all of you.